Hi, I'm Pam Fox at pamfox.org, and in today's video I have broken down and I'm going to try to summarize the 3 top primary things that I did to reverse my hiatal hernia, overcome GERD, and yes, I lost 50 pounds in the process, but that's not really what this video is about. In this video, I've got this blanket around me because I've got the heat turned off and it's very cold this morning, but the heat the sound of the heaters interferes with the audio, so that's why I'm bundled up. Before I get started, I want to share my juice this morning. You can see how it's separated. For those of you that are following me on my 7-day green juice challenge over on Facebook, this is the same juice I had yesterday. It's a head of celery, 2 Granny Smith apples, and a lime, or about a half a lime. So primarily in this video, I want to share exactly what I did to reverse my hiatal hernia and promote my e-course, which is I launched about a month ago, and it's where I've pretty much put everything that I learned and did to reverse my hiatal hernia all in one place. Because as some of you know who have been following me, I've been sharing my journey of reversing my hiatal hernia now for quite some time here on YouTube and now on Facebook, and it's really, really awesome that I've been able to help a lot of people. I do consultations, but I was able to put all of this together in one place, which makes it nice because it's more affordable. It's more affordable than hiring me to coach you, and everything is all in one place, exactly everything that I did to reverse my hiatal hernia. And I know that everyone's going to be different. What works for one person might not work for another. But to me, in my heart and in my mind, I knew logically that reversing the hiatal hernia, moving that stomach down and out of the herniated position was what I needed in order to overcome GERD and to be normal and to feel good again. And it's really such an incredible thing to feel normal and to feel good again and to be symptom free. So the 3 things, the 3 primary things that I did are: 1, I changed my diet; 2, I learned how to effectively and safely move my stomach down by myself with my own 2 hands, and then keep it down. Learned how to keep it down. So I want to talk a little bit about each of those in this video. So the first thing that I did was I changed my diet. So for many people, I went on a whole foods plant-based diet, and for many people this is enough. This is enough to help them completely reverse their condition and overcome their symptoms, even with hiatal hernia, if it's a small one, I think, and if it just depends on the hernia and how it sits and where the pressure is and all of that, and your lifestyle, a number of different factors. And I talk about all of these in the course. But for some people, they do get relief just from the diet alone. That wasn't my experience. So what the diet did do for me, though, however, I talk about in other videos all of the things the diet did for me. It helped me overcome and reverse a number of lifelong conditions. But the reason I went on the diet was specifically for GERD. The GERD was driving me insane. I literally felt like I was losing my mind. I had to try something. I was very desperate. And to me, a whole foods plant-based diet seemed very extreme. It seemed something only desperate people would try. And I put it off for a long time. And then I finally decided I can do this for 30 days just to see, because other people were getting the results that I wanted. And so I did. I tried it for 30 days just to see. And it didn't reverse my hiatal hernia. But what it did do for me was it eliminated my constipation and it eliminated bloating, which meant that that pressure from bearing down to pass the bowel movement that pushes the stomach up into the diaphragm was eliminated. And then the bloating as well, which can also put pressure on your lower esophageal sphincter. So just a little refresher for those of us with hiatal hernia, it begins, the stomach can push against the diaphragm. It's supposed to hang out kind of like down here like this, but it pushes against the diaphragm and eventually through, for those of us with hiatal hernia, through the diaphragm. And so if you're constipated, your abdominal muscles contract every time you pass the bowel movement, and it pushes your stomach up, and it puts pressure on your stomach up against the diaphragm. And your stomach, all of the organs in your abdominal cavity have attachments. They have adhesions. They're connected by a mesentery known as the peritoneum. And so if your stomach is constantly pressed up against your diaphragm, it's going to create its new home there. If it's through your diaphragm, through that hiatus, that hole I always like to do this, that hole in your diaphragm where the esophagus comes through, if your stomach is now coming through there, it will create a new home within your diaphragm, new adhesions, new attachments, okay? So when they come in to do a surgical repair of a hiatal hernia, they have to cut through and incise that peritoneum in order to pull that stomach down. So we want that stomach to sit down here below the diaphragm, not against it and not through it. And if we have something that's constantly pushing it up, like constipation, and there are a number of other things that can put pressure on your stomach. And again, I talk about these in the course. I think there are a list of 14 different things that can be culprits or contributors to pushing your stomach up. And I'm going to talk about another one in this video. One of the other, constipation is a main one, and there's another one that I'm going to talk about. But just by eliminating that gives the stomach a little bit of room to move down. But in my case, just with diet, I continued to have, my reflux went away, which was great, but I still had just kind of a general nausea much of the time, a general indigestion much of the time. You know, that communication your body gives to you that something's not quite right, of feeling not quite comfortable and good. And I also had what I call chronic belching, and I talk a lot about that here on different videos. And why we have chronic belching. It took me a long time to figure out why we have chronic belching, but it makes perfect sense to me now. I talk about it in other videos, and I talk about it in my course. The reason why we can have chronic belching. There are a number of different reasons, but specifically for hiatal hernia, there's a very good explanation. Okay, so the diet helped, but it did not eliminate the chronic belching, the indigestion, and the nausea. So I knew that I needed to figure out a way, if all of these symptoms are textbook result of a hiatal hernia, of a stomach locating itself within your diaphragm, that I knew that if I could move that stomach down and out of that position, then those symptoms would go away. Because one of the reasons that we have the symptoms that we do is because when your stomach is against or through your diaphragm, it compromises and puts pressure on what's known as the lower esophageal sphincter. So many of you with these conditions know all about the lower esophageal sphincter, but just as a refresher, where the esophagus meets the stomach, there's a valve, and its job is to clamp down tight and keep the contents in the stomach. And when this valve is not able to clamp down tight, then we can have reflux and other symptoms. And so by moving that stomach down, it can take that pressure off of that valve, moving it down and out of the herniated position. So I knew that this is what I needed to do. So that's the number 2 thing I did, was I learned how to personally move my stomach down. And there are all kinds of instructional videos all over here on YouTube of, chiropractors showing us exactly how to do this. The problem I had with this, and the problem I had in my test group, I had volunteers test my course, and they mentioned as well, and I belong to hiatal hernia support groups. I hear people say this all the time. When I've tried to move my stomach down, it makes me more symptomatic and it puts me in pain, and that was my experience too. So I started trying to move my stomach down, and then I gave it up and I walked away from it because it made me feel worse. But I came back to it because I knew again in my heart and my mind that this was the answer. And I did go to a chiropractor, and I had him pull my stomach down. But because I have a sliding hiatal hernia, I was symptomatic again. I always make this joke, but I was symptomatic again by the time I got to the parking lot because it didn't stay down. So I knew I had to figure out how to do it on my own so I could do it all the time. Get that stomach to move down, and recreate new attachments in the location it's supposed to be. And so what I just began to do was take the information that chiropractors teach and develop some alternative exercises, more gentle exercises, and just practice them consistently. And that's the key. That's the key. I think a lot of people will try this pulling. They'll say it didn't feel good or it didn't work, and they'll give it up. So what you have to remember is if you have a hiatal hernia, it didn't occur overnight, and it's probably not going to heal overnight, although I have consulted people and just showing them my exercises with one touch, they've had instant relief from their symptoms. It happened just the other day. For most people, however, that's not the case, and it wasn't the case for me. I had to work at this consistently before I was able to really make the connection, get to know my hernia, and figure out how to move my stomach down. And once I figured it out, once I really made that connection, where to push, how far to push, I was able to get instant relief from my symptoms and then go from there and learn how to strengthen my diaphragm, which is number 3 in order to keep your stomach down. But I'm not quite there yet. So I have a little diagram here. So this is just an example of a hiatal hernia where your stomach, a portion of your stomach is above your diaphragm. So this is the esophagus here. Again, you can see how the stomach is pushed up against the diaphragm instead of hanging out kind of down here on its own below the diaphragm, which is what we want. So this is a little bit of the stomach that's gone through the hiatus and it's up in the chest cavity. So where the arrow is pointing, that's indicating this area of the stomach that's known as the fundus. And so what I began to do, so in many of the instructional videos, they would, I'm just going to stand up and show you, they would say, you know, to come straight down, push down, you know, here and here, and, you know, hold and then push down further and push down further to move that stomach down. And many of them would instruct to come straight down here. And that's what would cause me to be, you know, more symptomatic. That's what would cause me to be in pain. And there's a logical explanation for the pain, is because if your stomach is herniated through your diaphragm, then those tissues are going to be tender and inflamed anyway, because it's not supposed to be up there like that. All that, it'd be like putting, you know, a rubber band on your stomach all the time. Yeah, it's going to be tender and inflamed. So, so that's part of the reason that we have the pain if we start pushing on that hernia. And so again, if you focus on coming to the left, over here to the left, and pushing on this fundus instead, you still may have some pain and tenderness because you're pulling, that's going to push that stomach down and pull that through the hiatus. It's still maybe tender, but for me, it was a little less painful. And I did it very gently. And like I said, I was consistent. I would lie down on my back. Personally, this is what I did. I would lie down on my back and just gently, I'll stand up again, coming over here. So this is, it helps to, so this is my, you can see my ribs. You can see my rib right there. So if you come down over to the left and you find that fundus just below, so here's center, just below that left rib, and pull down, you're pushing on this fundus, okay? So you want to come in and I would just lay down and gently, very gently, do kind of like this for about 5 minutes every day. So you can try that. You can try that and see if that gives you a little bit of relief. See if you feel some little bubbles in there. I wouldn't try it on a super full stomach because, again, if you've got, you know, if this is expanded and full and this is expanded and full, and then you start pushing on it, you can see how that would be uncomfortable as well. So, but in my course, I actually have tutorials, exercise tutorials. I have short ones, long ones. I think I have 4 different exercise tutorials with all of the exercises I did to push my stomach down. I actually developed a whole series of 10 exercises that not only push the stomach down, but help keep the stomach down through those diaphragm exercises, which I am going to get to. But the other thing that I wanted to mention, I talked about constipation being the #1 contributor to hiatal hernia. The other thing is it's very simple. It's very logical. And a lot of times when I share this with people, they're like, I don't know, Pam. But it's pulling in your abs, okay? So many of us pull in our abs, right? You know what I'm talking about? Like if we're exercising, we're instructed to pull in our abs, tighten our abs. If we're trying to suck in our gut so we don't appear fat, we pull in our abs. You know, if we're wearing swimsuit or shorts, we pull in our abs. And so when we do this, those abdominal muscles contract and they push up on that stomach. And if you're a lifelong tummy puller inner like I am, like I have been my whole life, that puts constant pressure on that stomach and pushes it up against the diaphragm. And once that hiatus, again, that hole in the diaphragm where the esophagus comes through, if that hiatus begins to weaken because it's a muscle as we get older and we become less active, that can be one reason, but it can weaken for a number of reasons, and it can stretch and expand, then that's going to give your stomach room to come through that diaphragm. So we need to relax our belly. We need to relax our abs. We need to relearn how to breathe so that we're breathing into our belly. I call this baby's breath. You know how when you watch a baby breathing, the stomach expands, okay? Which for most of us, when we get older, we forget how to belly breathe, and we just breathe up here in our chest, and we're pulling in our abs. So I talk a lot about this. But relearning how to breathe and relearning how to breathe into belly and learning how to relax your abdominal muscles is really, really key to reversing your hiatal hernia, because if you really desire to effectively move your stomach down so you can be symptom free, but you still have something pushing your stomach up, whether it's constipation or pulling in your abs or a number of other things, could be chronic sneezing, chronic coughing, vomiting. There are a number of reasons that we contract our abs violently, and that pushes consistent pressure up on your stomach. So that's key. That was really, really key for me, was learning how to open up the belly, breathe into the belly, relax that belly when I exercise, when I drive, when I'm brushing my teeth, when I'm washing the dishes. Driving was the worst for me. I was really, really symptomatic when I was driving. And so what I was able to do was practice belly breathing while I was driving. I would come into a bit of a reclining position to really lift the rib cage up and give the abdominal cavity room, and practice that deep belly breathing where I expand my belly and breathe into my belly. And this, I could really begin to feel the stomach moving down, and my symptoms would go away. So if I was chronically belching and burping in the car when I was driving, I would do this exercise and the belching would go away. It would just go away. So number one, I went on a plant-based diet. Number two, I learned how to move my stomach down effectively with my own two hands and by relaxing my abs and breathing into the belly, and consistently practicing daily, getting to know my hernia, getting to know where my stomach was, what felt good, what felt bad. We got to listen to our bodies, guys. We've got to listen to, when our bodies communicate with us, it's because they're letting us know that something's not quite right, and they do that through pain and discomfort. So when we experience pain and discomfort, we must listen. We must listen, and we must react, right? If you're standing too close to the fire, you feel the heat, you react, you move back, right? So we've got to listen and we've got to react. So the number three thing I did was I learned how to keep my stomach down. So this was where the real magic happened, because I was able to figure out a way to get instant relief from my symptoms, and I was pretty dang happy about that. But what I found was I was constantly kind of, walking around going like this, or I'd be driving down the road like this. Because as long as I could push my stomach down, then I didn't have any pressure on my lower esophageal sphincter, and I was fine. Sometimes just doing the belly breathing, I didn't have to push. I got to the point where just doing the belly breathing would give me relief. But I always wanted to feel normal all the time. I wanted to be symptom-free all the time, and I didn't want to have to constantly manage and correct this hiatal hernia. So it occurred to me, this is the really, really good news in all of this, that your diaphragm is skeletal muscle. It is classified as skeletal muscle. And so what does that mean? That means we can strengthen it. That means we can strengthen that muscle. So that means that hiatus, which has weakened or enlarged or expanded or dilated or whatever word you want to use, it means we can tighten that back up again, right? Because we can tighten muscles, we can strengthen, we can bulk up muscles through resistance exercises. And so the first logical thing, you think of in how to strengthen your diaphragm is what? Diaphragm exercises. So I started doing diaphragm exercises, and there's a number of them. One is just simple diaphragmatic breathing. And what I noticed when I would do these exercises right away was that I was symptomatic. It made it worse. And the simple explanation for that is because we are instructed to pull in our abs when we do diaphragmatic breathing, right? We breathe in, we expand our belly, we breathe out, we contract our belly. That's how we're instructed to do diaphragmatic breathing. And yes, that will strengthen your diaphragm, but it will also push your stomach up. It will further herniate your herniation. So the exercises that I teach are very hiatal hernia specific diaphragmatic breathing that help you strengthen your diaphragm without further herniating your stomach. It's really, there's nothing to it. But it takes practice, and it takes consistency, and it takes a good mindset, because I get people contact me all the time, especially singers, and they say it's impossible to do your exercises, because what I say is to relax your abs the entire time, and at no time pull in your abs when you do these exercises. Don't pull in your abs because that pushes your stomach up. So you must strengthen your diaphragm without pulling in your abs. And people tell me it's impossible. It's not impossible. It just takes practice. It just takes practice. And, you know, like anything, once you do it a few times, you'll get it. And eventually, if you stick with it, you'll master it. And when I started doing these exercises to strengthen my diaphragm, that's when I really started to notice that I just wasn't symptomatic anymore, that I just didn't have symptoms, that the belching it didn't come and go. It just didn't come at all. The nausea, the indigestion, the discomfort that I would have occasionally, I just started having it less and less, and just not at all. So I think that's basically it. I went on a plant-based diet. I learned how to effectively and safely move my stomach down. And I learned how to keep it down by strengthening my diaphragm. All right. So I hope this has been helpful. You can come to my website, pamfox.org, if you want more information about my online course, where all of the information on how I reverse my hiatal hernia is in one affordable and easy place. If you don't want to pay for my course, I've been talking about this stuff here on my YouTube channel. You can follow me on Facebook. I still talk about it all the time. I stream into my hiatal hernia and GERD and LPR support groups and talk about this stuff and answer questions all the time. So you can follow me on Facebook as well. So there you go. There you have it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.